Hey, everybody, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. This is not just a Hollywood tragedy. It is not just a double homicide. This is a case that has blown a hole straight through one of America's most famous families, and now it just took a turn nobody saw coming. As we all now tragically know, Rob Reiner and his wife Michele are both dead, brutally stabbed inside their own Brentwood mansion. Police arrested their own son, Nick Reiner. Nobody blinked when an A-list lawyer signed on to the most shocking celebrity murder case of the decade. But when that same lawyer bolts, even before the client is arraigned, that, my friend, is news. And that's the jaw-dropping twist that just happened in Los Angeles courtroom. Rob Reiner's son, Nick Reiner, was right there in front of a judge Wednesday, January 7th, answering to 2 counts of first-degree murder. And in court, Nick Reiner basically had to sit there and watch right alongside everyone else, while his high-powered, famous attorney, Alan Jackson, told the court that he's out.
On behalf of Watson Jackson and Quinn, and with Mr. Reiner's understanding and consent, would ask to withdraw as counsel of record based on the conversation that we've had in chambers and the explanation that we've provided to the court in chambers. We feel that we have no choice at this juncture but to withdraw as counsel and ask to be relieved.
The judge agreed, and instead of Alan Jackson, Nick Reiner now has a public defender. Her name is Kimberly Green. I don't know her. I don't know her background. I suspect I will get to know her very well in the coming months. But the judge did do a delay here and pushed the arraignment more than a month to February 23rd. And officially, that was that. Alan Jackson's out. But not before he went to the mics outside of the court, and this now ex-attorney of Nick Reiner, Alan Jackson, he had a lot more to say about this case, and I don't know if you'll be surprised by it, but you be the judge.
This morning, I had to withdraw as Nick Reiner's counsel. Circumstances beyond our control, but more importantly, circumstances beyond Nick's control, have dictated that, sadly, it's made it impossible for us to continue our representation of Nick. My team and I remain deeply, deeply committed to Nick Reiner and to his best interests. In fact, we know, we're not just convinced, we know that the legal process will reveal the true facts of the circumstances surrounding this case. You know, a lot's been printed of late, over the last 3 weeks. A lot has been printed. Printed about Nick, printed about his family, printed about the circumstances. Speculation is in print. On December 15th, in the early morning hours, I was in New York at the time, and I got a call. Me and my team, we dropped everything. And for the last 3 weeks, we have devoted literally every waking hour to protecting Nick and his interests. We've investigated this matter top to bottom, back to front. What we've learned, and you can take this to the bank, is that pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that. Print that. We wish him the very, very best moving forward. And that's all I have today.
Well, we are printing it. Well, we're broadcasting it. Well, we're podcasting it. But that's going to make headlines everywhere. And when Alan Jackson says stuff like that, it makes headlines because it's Alan Jackson, Karen Reed's lawyer, but also because he's not wrong. It's a loaded thing to say that he's not guilty of murder. But I think you all know by now, because you're true crime community, that murder has certain elements, right? You can kill somebody, right? You can do something horrible And you can be not guilty of murder by reason of insanity. So, he just left those words off when he said, not guilty of this murder. Yeah. By reason of insanity. And I know that a lot of people get very anxious and upset about that defense because it sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like you're trying to get away with murder by reason of insanity. Lock them up. But there is just so much to it. And if you're against it, well, I've got news for you. This will be happy, music to your ears. It basically almost never works. People do not prevail in insanity defenses. It's brought up in less than 1%, fewer than 1% of the murder cases out there, and it prevails in even less of a percentage. So very few people are successful with an insanity defense. That said, there's some stuff ahead that might blow your mind. Really interesting stuff I didn't see coming. But let me go here. A spokesperson for the family said, and I quote, "They have the utmost trust in the legal process and will not comment further on matters related to the legal proceedings." End quote. I get it. This family is in torment, right? Mom and dad are dead. Brother is facing the worst punishment possible other than death, right? So yeah, if I were them, I would say no comment too. I wouldn't even know which end is up at this point. But there's so much more about this case that has yet to be revealed. And earlier on my News Nation show, Banfield, I talked to my old friend Harvey Levin and his team at TMZ. They're usually the first people to unearth like a lot of the facts. And oh my God, you are going to want to hear what Harvey has to say about this because my jaw's still on the floor. Yet again, he found something big. First, though, thank you so much for supporting this podcast. It is going to be a great 2026. Also want to thank my sponsors who help make this podcast possible, like Simply Safe. This video is sponsored by Simply Safe. When I'm at home, my number one priority is keeping my family safe. And there's no safe like Simply Safe. It's not just about cameras on the doors. It's the peace of mind knowing that every corner of my house is protected.
Simply Safe on.
I love that with Simply Safe, the app, I can check live camera feeds, arm or disarm the system, and even get alerts instantly. I can lock or unlock my door no matter where I am, at home or away. So all you do is you hit it, listen, watch. You can do that from anywhere. I love it. And with ActiveGuard, their AI-powered outdoor protection, monitoring agents can actually stop crime before it happens. They can see and speak to somebody who's suspicious. They can trigger spotlights and even request police all before a break-in. It is easy to install yourself or have a pro do it. No contracts. Monitoring is about $1 a day. And Simply Safe has been ranked best home security 5 years in a row. And here's the best part. Because I want you to have the same peace of mind that I do at my house, I've got a 50% discount for you on your new Simply Safe system when you sign up for professional monitoring. And your first month is also free. Visit simplysafe.com/dropdeadserious. Again, that's simplysafe.com/dropdeadserious. Check them out. There is no safe like Simply Safe.
Harvey, what is your reaction to this bombshell that Alan Jackson is stepping away from Nick Reiner's case?
So we broke that story today, and we had been hearing this. So, look, I think there are things I can say and things that I just can't. But I will say this, that the Reiner family, when you look at their statement saying what we want is, we want justice, essentially. But they never define what justice is. And I think that in itself is telling, that you've got to imagine that this family has so many conflicting emotions. On the one hand, Nick Reiner is their flesh and blood. On the other, the flesh and blood of their parents was basically butchered in that home, courtesy of Nick Reiner. That's pretty clear. And so for that family to process the loss of their parents, the way they were killed, who killed them, and then to have some understanding of what was going on in Nick Reiner's world, and there is a big story there, Ashleigh. It is a slew of emotions, and so when you look for one answer to this, I don't think you're going to find it.
Yeah, you know, I am so interested in what you just said regarding the justice. Our family wants justice. It could mean justice for Nick. It could mean justice for Rob and Michele. And I'm so curious about the money. You and me, we both follow the money because that's what we've been taught as journalists to do. Do you think that the Reiner family cut him off and said, you're not accessing the Reiner money for a big, expensive lawyer?
I don't think that's what happened here. Based on what I know. Makes sense. I know why you're saying it. Crossed my mind too. I don't think that's what happened here.
Have you had a chance to talk to Alan Jackson at all and find out what's behind this move?
You know, I think what's behind the move is a very complex issue with this family. That they have lost their parents in a brutal way at the hands of their flesh and blood. So, you know, again, when you think about them saying what we want is justice, they never define justice. And frankly, Ashleigh, from what I'm hearing, that's not an easy thing for them to define. They want justice for their parents, but there's also something big that is going on with Nick in terms of mental health. It is why Alan Jackson got in front of the cameras after he withdrew today, or on Wednesday, and said that Nick Reiner will be found not guilty of murder. He is saying that not because he's arguing that the Reiners did not die at the hands of Nick. He's saying it because where this case has been going, Ashleigh, is not guilty by reason of insanity. And that's where this case is heading. And it has to do with mental health, and it has to do with allegations that the mental health system has shockingly failed Rob, Michele, and Nick Reiner.
Well, I know that your special that's coming out on Friday, TMZ Investigates the Reiner Murders, What Really Happened. You've uncovered some critical evidence, I think, to the very point you're making right now, and that is not guilty to some people doesn't incorporate the not guilty by reason of insanity. Doesn't mean you didn't commit the crime. It just means you're not mentally capable of being guilty by reason of law. So can you share anything or at least tell us a little bit about what you've uncovered in the special?
I can be specific. So a month before the murders, Nick was on antipsychotic meds. Nick had been diagnosed around 2020 with a form of schizophrenia. We know this. It is called schizoaffective disorder. It is a severe form of schizophrenia that not only involves psychosis, delusions, but also involves severe mood disorders. And when you combine the two, it becomes volcanic. So Nick had been on antipsychotic meds for several years. And a month before the murders, what we are being told is those meds were working. They were working fine. There is for some reason, his doctors changed the meds and it sent him into orbit. He became delusional. He became dangerous. The Reiners saw it. They were alarmed. It built and built and built the month before the murders. And it all revolved around a change in the meds. Now, what I am told, Ashleigh, I'm going to tell you what I know and what I don't know. What I'm told is that there was absolutely no justification to change the meds. And the reason it was changed, I am told, would shock you, would absolutely shock you, that you can't even look at logic to understand it. As to what it is specifically, my sources will not say. but they know something about the change in these meds. And I have confirmed this with others too, that the meds did change, and he just went off the rails. And so there is something about that change that directly connects to Nick's state the night of those murders.
Which may be the reason Alan Jackson went out with a bang and said, I can tell you definitively, he had very strident language, that Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder, which, again, remind everybody, it doesn't mean not guilty of committing them, just by reason of insanity, which leads me to my next question. Without Alan Jackson there, he's got a public defender, but do you expect this public defender to stay in place long, or do you think some other high-octane attorney is going to step up?
Well, look, if this defense is used, I don't see how the public defender can do this, because as you know, that in cases like this, you need expert witnesses. This is complicated. He was in rehab 18 times. There are all sorts of problems that you and I have not even discussed involving those 18 stints in rehab, about what the rehab facilities did and didn't do, and there's a big story there. So they're going to need a lot of expert witnesses. We are talking hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the experts, not to mention what a lawyer might cost. And I don't know that the public defender has the resources to do that. So I honestly don't see this being handled long-term by the public defender. Will another lawyer step in? If I had to guess, the answer would be yes. And, you know, we just have to see how this plays. I think money is an issue here. And it's not that the Reiners don't have the money. Rob Reiner was worth a fortune. But, you know, right now there is an estate, there are family members, there are feelings. So I think you got to see how this all plays out. And I think money, you know, could become a factor here. But it's money mixed with feelings, and that gets really complicated.
There is one thing when it comes to insanity. There is another thing when it comes to competency. And competency is the gateway to walk into a courtroom in the first place. Is there any chance that Nick Reiner is going to be ruled incompetent and can't even stand trial?
There is a big chance. And it has to do with what we talked about a few minutes ago, which is that Nick is still not stabilized from these drugs. He's now being treated by jail doctors, and these drugs are not working. In order to be competent to stand trial, you have to be able to assist in your own defense. I have real questions about whether Nick Reiner at this point is capable of doing that.
Well, you also have to understand the charges against you. And if he's in that kind of psychosis, he may not even know that his parents are dead. I mean, this is a high bar, even though people don't think it is. It kept Elizabeth Smart's captors out of court for the better part of a decade.
Well, I can only talk about certain things right now, Ashleigh, that we're going to have in the documentary. But I will say this about what you just said. Even if somebody knows what they did, I'll give you an example. There's a man named David Carmichael who was in Canada, and he strangled his 11-year-old son. He was on an antidepressant. He became psychotic, and he not only he strangled him in a hotel room, put him on the bed, watched television for 6 hours, and called the police and said, "I just killed my 11-year-old son." So David Carmichael knew exactly what he had done. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and the judge accepted it. So you can know what you did, but a lot of people in a psychosis do it because of a delusion that they're doing it to save the person. They're doing it because in their mind, that person has become an ominous threat, something like that. So even if they know what they've done, that doesn't mean they're still competent to stand trial. It has to do with understanding that, you know, what the case against them is, whether they can assist in that case, help the lawyer, and that's an issue. But you don't think it's just about not understanding what you've actually done.
No, what I'm always fascinated by is the circumstances that bring certain people into courtrooms where they do rule them incompetent. Oftentimes, they don't even know what's going on around them. I mean, it can be so bad, and we don't know the situation with Nick, but we know it's bad. Let's move to the possibility that he jumps over the bar for competency. And it is ruled that he is competent to stand trial. Well, now there's a whole other kettle of fish to attack, and that is, does he know right from wrong, right? That's a big one. And is he able to assist in his defense? And one of the issues with Nick Reiner's pattern after the murders is that he took off. He got a hotel room. He washed himself off. Those are really, really difficult facts to get past if you're trying to establish that he didn't know right from wrong.
Okay. I'm not trying to be contentious today because you and I have known each other for years, but I will argue with you on that because knowing right from wrong is not an essential element of the insanity defense. The insanity defense means that you don't understand the nature and quality of the act. David Carmichael, who I just mentioned, knew that he killed his son. He also called the police and said that he believed he would end up in prison for the rest of his life because he felt what he did was morally right, even though he felt it was legally wrong. So David Carmichael knew exactly what he had done. He knew it was against the law. He did it because of his delusion, yet they found him not guilty by reason of insanity. Similarly with Nick, you're right. Nick fled. Nick went to a hotel in Santa Monica. Nick, well, watch the documentary, but there are other things he did.
Something's coming, yeah. Something's coming. I can tell you're going to drop something really, okay. You got to come back on this show in the next couple days, you know, because I can sense you're holding back a little bit.
You almost got
well,
it out of
listen,
me.
I will say this, Harvey.
Some states
have two prongs, right? Some states have the McNaughton rule, which means you've got to have two prongs, which is I don't know the difference between right and wrong, and I don't understand the charges against me. There are two different, but California may be different. In any case, I can see that you've got something more. So will you come back on the show?
Of course I will.
I always love talking to you because you're a lawyer. Harvey Levin, thank you so much.